Welcome back to Checkpoint XP on campus, your #1 resource for esports at the collegiate level. I am your host, Norris Howard. I want to throw it out there to the guys at the UNLV studios. What's going on, everybody?
Hey there, hi there, it's Daniel Guya.
Hi, how are you? Jacob Brothers here.
All right, guys. So I want to jump into a story that we had in the Washington Post. First of all, they've created a brand new gaming and esports division called Launcher, where they'll be dedicating all the news in that section to esports and gaming coverage. I think this is a huge deal. This is the Washington Post, one of the biggest names in all of media, finally dedicating something to gaming and esports. So I think that, #1, is very commendable. And we all know democracy dies in darkness. So word out to the Washington Post for that one. But I want to talk about a featured story that they did on Harrisburg University. Now, Harrisburg is a school that we've talked about a lot. They're featured heavily in the Overwatch Varsity series, but we now have some sort of solid numbers and really a better lay of the land in terms of what is going into their esports program. So, Jacob, I want to toss this out to you. We got some numbers here about what they have at their esports program at Harrisburg.
Yeah, they gave us some details on where they actually play, which is a 2.5K square foot place called Stage 2.
Jeez.
Pretty banging. Then they've invested $750,000 cash monies for facilities with a $2 million budget.
Wait, million?
Million. They are raking it.
They are balling.
And then apparently some players have been offered Overwatch League contracts. Harrisburg in particular has been really blowing up.
Not to mention they turned down Overwatch League contracts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think kind of the takeaway is... Was that Norris?
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I think one of the big takeaways is that this is what you get when you invest money into your sports program.
Oh, man.
Because you have these other bigger schools where they're like, oh, yeah, we acknowledge their existence, and then they play in a computer lab. Well, here it's like, oh, yeah, we gave you a couple million, and here you are turning down Overwatch League contracts.
This is stuff you get for like a traditional athletics team right here, man.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also like a strength for smaller schools, because that's one thing the article touched on that I like. It's like the opening line is, it's not often that Ohio State is the underdog when playing a smaller school. And so I think it's cool that these smaller schools now they can put their money into something that they know they dominate more than bigger schools, and they can rake in more attention and students in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, for sure. And so I want to pose a question to you guys that this article immediately made me think about is, as the esports scene continues to grow and mature, what will create a power school or a power conference in the world of esports? So we know we have like the Big Ten, SEC, ACC in certain sports, in the NCAA. If the same sort of rubric was put towards esports, what would create a power conference in esports? Because like you're saying, they're trying to be the Notre Dame, quote unquote, of esports. Harrisburg is.
First thing that comes to mind is you need the money.
You need the backing, yeah.
You need the backing. Look what Harrisburg is doing. They are putting so much money into their facilities, into their players and look, guess what? It's going to show because these players are getting the support they need. They're going to get the practice they need, and they're going to show that because of that, they're going to dominate the esports scene.
And then when it comes to like a whole conference, it's really small victories, right? Like you need these schools to be playing each other.
Yes.
They're not going to be rivals. They're not going to know what level they really need to be competing at if they're not regularly playing each other, like in football and basketball. These schools have played each other for decades, so they know what level they need to be competing at to stay on top. And so like Harrisburg being on top's great, but schools are playing against regularly is like, okay, this is the bar. We need to be at this bar or better.
And I think that's an amazing point, though. Jacob, is that when you play other teams regularly, you allow rivalry to grow. And let's be frank, outside of certain schools like Michigan, Ohio State, or other already built-in rivalries, esports is going to be able to create even new ones from newer schools or smaller schools that are really going to take this thing to the next level. I think that's an amazing point.
And, with having all the inter-conference competitions, in one thing, you get people looking at their sport. You get people watching the sport, and then that creates interest. And that's another thing these conferences need. You need people to be interested in watching these events.
Well, especially with these platforms, it's a lot easier to organize matches.
Yes.
I mean, even if you do non-official ones, you can do online scrims. You can help kind of build that, because it's gaming's a more community-based sport. So you can build that kind of a community, and then the rivalries will grow. And then when they actually play each other in real games, the rivalry's at its peak.
And that's a nice thing. You don't need a big TV contract to broadcast these games. You have the internet.
You have Twitch.
You have Twitch.
Yeah, and another big thing that came out of this article is that the students at Harrisburg are incredibly supported by the faculty and by the administration at the school. They're given the same sort of scheduling and practice and class schedules as a traditional athlete would. They have dietitians, they have physical training regimens. So when we're talking about holistically supporting a esports platform or creating an esports platform, you have to go all in. Yes. And that's what Harrisburg has seemed to do here. And they're reaping the benefits. I mean, let's be honest, to go out and win at an Overwatch Grand Final, the Collegiate Grand Final, in your first year as a program, I mean, it's fairly obvious that a good environment will lead to success. So moving on, we got to go to the story that just won't go away, guys. This will not go away.
It never ends.
Yeah, so Blizzard's Hong Kong debacle, if you will, continues. And in a bipartisan letter from Congress, the United States government, you had people from both sides of the aisle implore Blizzard to reverse their decision against Blitzchung. Guys, I mean, this is nuts, man. This is nuts.
Well, and you got some big names signing this article. You got Rod Ryden, you got Marco Rubio, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Mike Gallagher, Tom Malinowski. Again, both sides of the aisle talking about how, it's important that Blizzard kind of sets a standard here for standing up to Chinese demands. I have some issues with the letter, though. For one thing, they talked about how Blitzchung was suspended for 1 year. A couple days before that, Blizzard kind of reneged a little bit and reduced the suspension for only 6 months.
Well, I think you also got it definitely is something that is a little bit behind the curve. But Jacob, go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off there.
No, you're good, homie. When I saw this letter, at the same time, you got to take your victories.
Yeah.
This is the most informed the government has ever been in a letter about video games. Like they got names correct. They got facts correct. I mean, maybe they got like some old news about like what penalties he's facing. But for the first time, they're not like tackling like games as a whole. They're just like, hey, this thing you did, we think it's kind of sketch for X, Y, and Z, as opposed to games you're gambling and games you're bad.
It is true. Yeah, it's not very often we see the government get involved in video games in a more positive light.
Yeah, I was more impressed when I read this. I was like, oh, you guys kind of are complaining about a realistic issue.
And I'm kind of on the.
Is this real life?
It is quite new. It is quite new and quite different. The one thing I will say is they put the hyphen between E and sports, which just irks me because the AP style book has the jury's been closed on this for a long time. And it doesn't have a hyphen.
It could be worse. It could be a capital E.
That's true.
We're going to be talking more about this story, as a matter of fact, with the students from American University about their decision to support Blitzchung's protest a little bit later on in the show. But I got to close on this, guys. You know me. I love my League of Legends. But North America did not look good. We continued to not look good. No North American team made it out of groups, and we totally deserve this. This is our fate. This is our lot in life.
Oh man.
This is our lot. I mean, Clutch Gaming did about as well as they were going to do. They were a team that was in the group of death against teams like SKT, which is the winningest team in all of League of Legends history. Cloud9, the farthest any NA team has made it at Worlds. They made it to semis last year. They came out and looked completely lethargic. They were not able to do anything against any of their group. They finished third and don't move into the groups at all. And Team Liquid, our best hope, the dream team of North America that was built specifically to go out and win Worlds, get smacked around in groups. They finished third as well. They can't overcome Dan One Gaming and Invictus Gaming, and thus we're back to square one of NA being terrible.
So, Norris, when it comes to these NA teams being bad, I mean, granted, in all esports we see NA teams falling short. Do you think it's just a skill gap thing, or is it specifically like execution shot calling? Is it drafting? Like, is there a specific area that NA just can't do, or is it just a skill gap overall?
Good question.
I definitely think there's a combination of a lot of it, but I also think that when you talk about Korea and China, there is a culture of esports that has existed much longer in the mainstream than it has here. And so the investment, the viability of it as a career, it really is just now getting to, you know, a logical point to where we could compete on the international stage. So I think that's probably the biggest factor. But NA has got to start being more creative. They can't keep running the same strats and playing the same players. They got to mature in that as well. But that's going to be it. We're going to have a lot more coming up for Checkpoint XP on campus, where we're going to be talking to Excelsior of American University, talking about his decision to support Hong Kong protests and to stand against Blizzard. So that and much more coming up next. Welcome back to Checkpoint XP on campus, your #1 resource for collegiate esports and beyond. If you haven't noticed, if you go to checkpointxp.com, there's a ton of really cool merch and really cool gear that you could go and check out. We got jerseys, we got hoodies, we got snapbacks, we got sweatshirts, all types of cool stuff for you to go and rep the brand. So hop on over to checkpointxp.com and hit that store button where you can find a bunch of cool merch. But speaking of cool, speaking of something that has me and the rest of the gaming world lit ablaze, Riot Games did their 10-year anniversary stream last week. And guys, we all expected some new developments for League of Legends, but we did not expect this. They announced everything, man. Everything.
Riot has now officially thrown the gauntlet to Blizzard to saying, hey, anything you can do, we can also do.
It's just a shotgun of games, yeah.
Holy moly. Where do we even start with this, Norris?
Well, I think where we start first, obviously,
fair enough.
Daniel, is we start with Project L, which is, you know, I mean, that's the number one.
Right
you
now.
know, so Project L right now is a fighting game that's being developed by Riot Games using the League of Legends IP. So the characters from League of Legends will be in this fighting game. That was confirmed at EVO 2019, but we got our first glimpse of what it looks like. It is going to be a 2D fighter, which thank God that it's going to be a 2D fighter. But I think moving on, Wild Hunt and TFT Mobile, y'all. We don't have League and TFT Mobile. Like, are we serious right now?
There is going to be a huge upswing in battery pack sales in the upcoming future.
Right. And I know that Wild Hunt is also being tweaked a little bit to be faster games since it is on the phone.
Yes.
So it's not like a direct port of League of Legends.
It's going to be like a separate game, and that's good.
Which that's great, because that means it's better fit for phones if it's getting specific tweaks for the phone.
But TFT Mobile. Oof.
TFT Mobile's the big takeaway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You guys are just as crazy about TFT as I am. And I mean, the moment it was announced, the moment it came out, I was just like, why is this not on my phone? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's a perfect fit. So, you know, it was a matter of when, not a matter of if.
Yeah, that's very true.
That is true. We also got an announcement for Legends of Runeterra, a card game, which I will actively avoid like the plague.
Oh, it's very fun.
I do not do card games. Jacob, the card games, enlighten me. I can't do the card games.
Okay, well, I'm a Magic the Gathering player for any kind of context.
Oh, that explains so much.
So my only concern with Legends of Runeterra is that when they say it's not going to be pay to win, I believe them. I believe Riot to that extent. But when they move further on with expansions, because the problem that Hearthstone has is that it's like, you know, well, also Blizzard's very pay to win. But they're like, here's these cards, here's a new set of cards. If you don't use them, you're done. In Magic the Gathering, all of the expansions are kind of built to rely on the previous cards, so you don't really deal with that problem. But for Legends of Runeterra, where they're all based around champions, They're not. It's going to be similar to the Blizzard expansions because you can't really avoid that. It's like here's the Gnar card because Gnar was not in the beta. So like here's the Gnar card, and then it's like here are the cards that are relevant to him. So I don't know how they're going to balance that while relying on the cards that are already out. But beyond that, it plays very well. It's very fluid, unique. I like it a lot.
I think I have faith in Blizzard to like be able to work this game around. And
You mean Riot?
Sorry, Riot. That's on me. That's on me. We still have Blizzard on the brain. I'm sorry.
Dare you?
I'm sorry, Blizzard on the brain. But I trust them to be able to balance this game and future expansions to fit better than, say, Hearthstone.
Yeah, they have fun ideas, and I think people will actually be able to play without putting money in and be able to get the decks they want because they're using the wild card system, which is from Magic the Gathering Arena, meaning that you can get whatever card of that rarity that you want.
And speaking of wild cards, we still have one more game to announce also.
And this one was a wild card.
And this was the one that, this caught everybody off guard. They have a new game called Project A that will not, the only game of this whole bunch that will not be using the League of Legends IP so far that we can see. But apparently it is a tactical shooter that will be mixing sort of Counter-Strike Go and Overwatch. It was so odd to see it in motion, but at the same time, it looked so cool.
Yeah, no, it seems a lot more similar to CSGO than Overwatch, which is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Especially because CSGO, it's been around for a long time now. It'd be nice for a game of that vein, a new game of that vein to come into the space, and this could very well be that.
And
yeah, and the thing is, guys, is that this is a play that Riot is making to say League will not be our only esport. If you think this is not them taking a shot at the entirety of the world of esports,
100%.
you are incorrect.
Boy, are they. They are
Big
just going for
things
every
are
pie.
coming, but unfortunately, we have to leave that conversation there. We have more coming up on Checkpoint XP on campus, where the biggest of brains, Jacob Brothers, will break down the final regular season week of the Overwatch Varsity series. Stay tuned for that and more.
P.S. Riot, please put Gnar in all of your games. Thank you.
Welcome back to Checkpoint XP, the #1 resource in the whole world for collegiate esports, at least to our knowledge. We have all sorts of social medias. You should be able to interface with all of us, but you can get to that hub, Checkpoint XP on Twitter and Facebook, Checkpoint_XP on Instagram. Follow us, say what's up, come and talk. And if you just want to yell at us because we got something wrong or you really think we're not good at this, we accept that too, but it's all love. So slide on over to those social medias and check us out, checkpointxp.com as well. Now, we're going to toss it back to the UNLV studios where Jacob Brothers, the largest of brains, the big cranium in the Overwatch Varsity series, is going to break down the last week of regular season. So, Jacob, what's up, man?
What'd it go, BB?
We are in the home stretch before playoffs, and most of the teams are already set in with one potential upset. So what we're looking at is in the West, we have North Texas, 5-0. Like I, big brain, had predicted. Because they were going to play 2 games, but one of the games didn't go through. So that's why they're 5-0, but they would have been 6-0. And then you have Utah, who was not previously in the top 4, won both their games, so now they're 4-1.
Out of nowhere.
So yeah, it looks like they're now very strong contenders, which is good because we were kind of expecting them to be. And then we have Irvine 4-2 and Dallas 3-2. But Boise State could snipe Dallas because they are also 3-2.
Oh, okay.
But Boise would have to beat North Texas, who is undefeated.
So that's the only way they can beat Dallas, I mean.
Yeah, so they could snipe Dallas if they beat North Texas, because that would give them 4-2. But, and then Dallas also plays Irvine. So kind of the thing there is that both teams are in games where they likely could lose, meaning they would both be tied after the final week.
So what happens in the case of a tie?
Man, that is such a great question. And you know what I did? I took myself over to the rules page of the tournament. I searched the word tie, and all that came up was ties in actual matches. So as far as standings go, I guess we're finding out next week.
Oh, man. This'll be fun. This'll be fun.
You'd think they'd have somewhere like, hey, you know, if they're tied in the standings, we'll do X, Y, and Z. But so far, that's not there. And we'll talk about it more next.
So,
what's up, Norris?
Yeah, so I want to definitely ask is that, you know, seeing that Boise State, you know, the ball is in their court, they could control their own destiny. Do you think they have a chance? Do they have a real chance at this?
It's not that Boise State isn't good enough. I think it's just that North Texas is too good.
Do you simply think North Texas is better?
Yeah, I would. And I mean, I think that Dallas could beat Irvine, so like this whole tie situation might not even happen because they're both very similar standings. But Boise State, I think they could still make playoffs because we'll talk about it more next week. But the bottom 8 teams are not done. They go into the play-in tournament where everyone else plays. But there's a bunch of rules with that, and we'll get into that next week. But these 8 teams aren't done, the bottom 8. So Boise State could very well make the overall 10 teams that go to playoffs through the play-in bracket. But we'll see.
And what about on the other side?
On the other side, we have Maryville, also undefeated, 6-0. Winthrop, 5-1. Darling Winthrop, my Winthrop. Missouri, 4-2, and Harrisburg, 4-2. And so for the East, it's a lot more simple. They're all in.
There is no chance for upsets.
Yeah, because remember, in the East, the gap was much bigger.
That's true.
Because I had said last week that the West was much more competitive, and that's why we're seeing this Boise State Dallas thing going on. But in the East, the gap was already pretty far, and then the gap just got bigger. This is definitely the division with the Titans. These are all big boys that are all probably going to get decently far in the playoffs. And the only other story that I saw with the East is that the 2 teams that made the Invitational through the qualifiers both did not make it.
Oh.
So that's a shame, but they were like 5th and 6th. So,
they barely missed. They missed it by this much.
Yeah. I mean, they were significantly behind Harrisburg and Missouri, but
still.
They still showed up a little bit.
So during the play-ins, is that going to be the teams from both the East and the West playing each other, or will there be separate play-ins for each division?
So, to my understanding, and I'll be doing all the fact-checking so we can talk about it next week, is that right now, because also the main season's going on for the Overwatch League, for the Varsity preseason, and they are all going to be together.
Yeah.
So it's going to be everyone from the main season, and the bottom 8 teams are going to be the top 8 seeds. So all of those top teams will be playing each other, and then the top 2 teams to come out of that play-in will go.
Okay.
So they are all going to be organized by like general skill gap, hence the seeding.
Yeah.
So the bottom 8 teams will be the top 8 teams as far as seeding goes in the play-in.
Makes sense.
All right, well, that's going to be it from the update on the Overwatch Varsity Series. If you're following this very closely, let us know. If you're a player on any of these teams, also let us know.
Please.
Send clips, send info. We would love it because we are big fans of the Overwatch Varsity Series, and we want to make sure that we're putting out as much info about it as we can. But coming up, one of our producers has come to us with a very, very in-depth and interesting topic. Stay tuned because this one's going to be a doozy. More for Checkpoint XP on campus coming up. Welcome back to Checkpoint XP on campus, your #1 resource for collegiate esports. I'm your host, Norris Howard, and I'm joined by 2 very, very special guests who are at the center of a very huge story in the middle of gaming right now. That's Torin, Wright, and Casey Chambers of American University. They were at the middle of the Blitzchung protests on the American side of things. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your side of the story.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yep. So what went into the planning and sort of the decision-making behind the protest or the decision to support Blitzchung's protest?
Well, kind of like originally we were really upset about the money getting taken away from some of the players when they were winning the contests. And we just we felt like we needed to put out something at least. We didn't think it would be too big. Like we thought maybe they would just censor us and it would just kind of roll over. So we just decided to put up the sign just because we wanted to kind of make our mark in any like little way we could.
And so, you know, after the protest was made, you guys initially were not punished, and you know, the suspension and the money had not been refunded to Blitzchung at that time. You know, how did it feel knowing that Blitzchung had been punished so severely, and you guys, up until fairly recently, we know now the situation has changed, but up until recently, were not punished?
Yeah, so we got an email a couple days ago saying that we had been banned from HS esports for 6 months. But the Thursday after our protest, which was on a Tuesday, we got our 5th match on TESPA compete, and I was pretty surprised because I assumed that at the very minimum we would be removed from the tournament, and it was disheartening to see how, in order to control the firestorm that had happened, that their decision was initially to go after Blitzchung, who was from Hong Kong, but not us. That was unfortunate to see.
Yeah, and so now that that 6 month suspension has been handed down to you guys, which is the same amount of suspension that Blitzchung has as well, do you guys feel that that is more accurate to, you know, in terms of the rules of the tournament or their streams, or do you still feel that it's a little bit too severe?
So there's two different messages that came from both of us. Our message directly called for a boycott of Blizzard, and Blitzchung's was pro human rights in Hong Kong. So I think that his current suspension is still on the harsher side of what could be reasonable, but it's much fairer than the original one that was handed down on him. Ours is about right. We broke quite a few rules about TESPA and how you're supposed to be on stream. So
Mm-hmm. And also, you know, now that the money for Blitzchung has been refunded and his suspension reduced, there's a vocal minority out there that says, hey, you know, no harm, no foul. He did break the rules and he's suspended, but he got his money back. Nobody should be making noise about this anymore. What is your message to those folks who have that sort of stance?
I mean, his whole point of doing the thing was to bring light to the issues in Hong Kong, and I think kind of they're devaluing his protest by kind of saying that it's like over, no harm, no foul. I would say that um, I'm glad, I'm glad he got the money back because he deserved it. He won it. Those are not easy tournaments to win, but I don't think like he would say I think he wouldn't say that his message is finished. I didn't think he would say it's over. I mean, people in Hong Kong are still getting silenced, so um, I think until like they get their freedoms, then the message should try to live on. Yeah.
And so, you know, in saying that, what is sort of you guys' message to those who maybe want to speak out about, you know, not necessarily just Hong Kong, but anything in the esports realm, whether it be college or professional? What is sort of your view on, you know, a lot of companies have now come out either saying that we have these rules in place to not share political speech on our streams, and other companies have said the opposite. You know, what is your stance on how esports as an, you know, as an industry should be moving forward with political speech?
So I think that companies behind esports should be more accepting of the speech of their players. And to any players who are considering something like what we did, I would just tell them to consider their range of options and pick whatever they feel is best for them. I mean, you can do things from just financial boycotts of Blizzard and still playing their games up all the way until what we did. And I think a good example of a lesser protest was our original plan, until we decided to change it, was just to, in the winner's interview, mention Blizzard's rules about accepting the speech of everyone, and having a global mindset. But we decided that because we didn't have much to lose, we were already going to drop out of the tournament anyway. Why not go for it? But I don't think everyone needs to do actions like we took in order to be supportive. So just there's a range of ways to speak out, and that's what I would tell players.
And just lastly, seeing the response that you guys got and that Blitzchung got over the course of the past, 2 to 3 weeks. How did that make you guys feel? And also, what does the future hold for yourselves and the Hearthstone team at American?
Well, honestly, like, we were very surprised initially, kind of like I was saying earlier, but I'm really happy that it kind of gained traction. Like, it means that people actually kind of care about, like, other people all the way across the world having, like, freedoms, which I didn't think that I'd ever make an impact kind of this large ever. I guess in terms of the Hearthstone team moving forward, I don't know if I would join it again until Blizzard openly kind of allows for, like, people to freely protest. They don't necessarily have to, I guess, we don't necessarily have to agree, but I think at least allowing the freedoms for people to speak their mind is something that I value very highly, and I wouldn't support Blizzard unless they would support me on that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Hearthstone team at this point is pretty dead. Personally, I'll be flying out to BlizzCon to join Fight for the Future's protests outside of BlizzCon on the opening day. And the future for me, I've started playing Gods Unchained, a game made by Immutable, who did openly come out and say that they would support the free speech of all of their players. I think that was a great thing to do. I think companies should follow in their footsteps. And I mean, I'm still going to keep gaming. My esports team told me, like, we're 100% behind you, so I'm still going to be in the space. And different game, it's going to be different, but we'll still be here. We'll still have our message, and we're going to keep it going.
Well, thank you so much. Torin, Wright, and Casey Chambers of American University have joined us on Checkpoint XP on campus. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and good luck to you in the future in all your endeavors.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
There's going to be more coming up on Checkpoint XP on campus, so stick with us. Welcome back to Checkpoint XP on campus, your #1 resource for collegiate esports. We usually like to do something a little bit fun at the end of the day just to cap it off. But one of our producers, Ethan Schneider, has shared with us a list, a very important list that he wants to bring to the show. So, Ethan, I suppose, take it away.
Tell us what your list is about, buddy.
As lead producer of Checkpoint XP on campus, one of my duties is to provide not only hard news and stuff you want to watch, but to provide the news you want to hear. So with that being said, it's time, the time, for my top 5, count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grasses in all of video games.
This idea is stupid
Let's
and I
get
hate
started.
it.
Here's to you, Daniel. Number 5, Green Hill Zone.
Let's go.
Why? Because it's not only is it iconic, but if you think of the Genesis and Sonic as a whole, that's the zone you think of. That's the grass. Not only is it the grass, but it is the grass of Jacob's childhood.
Retweet.
And it's also really nice and it holds the hills together, I say. Now moving on to number 4, Gary's mod. Why? Look at the grass. It looks comfy. It's like a bug in a rug. It's so snug. It's so comfy.
We're talking about video games.
This is video games. You're saying Gary's mod is not a video game? Anyway, number 3, moving on. Breath of the Wild. See, look at that. Without the grass, Breath of the Wild would be a 5 out of 10. With the grass, 20 out of 3. Bet your bottom.
That doesn't make any sense.
Bet your bottom candy bar on that. Number 2, let's move on. Pokemon. Why? Not only can you
Great
catch
choice.
them all, you could be it all. You could see it all. That grass is iconic, man. And that's from, Gen 3. Nice. Now, it's not good, but this one's better. Number 1, moving on. Minecraft. Why? You could buy seeds. You could make wheat. You could make flowers, dye. It provides everything you need. It's there. It's iconic. It's also the best grass. This has been the Grass Man, Ethan Schneider, with my top 5 grasses of video games ever of the year of the week.
I quit.
So that happened. Thanks for joining Checkpoint XP on campus, I suppose, where we talk about collegiate esports and also grass. We want to thank all the folks at the UNLV studios, Daniel Agbuya, Jacob Brothers, I guess Ethan Schneider. We want to thank all the UNLV faculty helping us out, as well as all the other students assisting behind the cameras and on the boards at the UNLV studios as well. We also want to thank producers Joe Sloan and Chad Callahan, Nate Bender here in Detroit. That's it from Checkpoint XP on campus. We hope and demand and really, really expect you to try your best to be back here next week, because, yeah.
Someone give me a lawnmower.
Bye.
Grass.
Wait till the next list. Top 5 water.
Stop it!